going. There's a lot to say, and I'm really sorry I'm going to speed run. So there is a lot I want to cover, but really I know that the audiences are usually quite dynamic and diverse, and so I'm hoping that I'm going to say something very small that you might pick on and say, oh, that sounds very interesting. And then after, please come and talk to me and ask me about it. So we're going to talk about the journey of Naked a little bit and just the lessons we learned along the way. And to have a quick start, who am I? I'm the CTO of Naked. Here's my email. If you want to contact me, please use that. Otherwise, LinkedIn, I'm sometimes there, not always. But yeah, let's get going to the important stuff. All right, so November 2016, Alex Sumioni and myself decided we're going to build this new insurance platform. It's going to be the first fully digital insurance platform in South Africa, and it's going to turn insurance on its head. Why or how? Essentially, the first thing was we're putting the control in the hands of the user. So they're going to be the ones who say, I am the one doing this. It's not sort of the big paternal figure of the big insurer says, just trust us. You don't know what you're doing. This stuff's complicated. And the second thing was removing the conflict of interest. So a big element around this is that obviously when you claim, you're taking away money from the shareholders and the people or the profits. And so how we did this is we said, okay, we're going to run 20% of the premiums. That's what we're going to run the entire business off of. That's it. The rest of it's going to go into the pot. That's going to pay out to communities depending on the claims experience for the customers that chose those communities. So that sort of removed the conflict from us because, I mean, we're running off the 20% and that's it. And as you can see, we've had a really good journey, recently had a very big funding round, and things are going well. So, but let's go back to the beginning. Let's go to how we started this. We had this idea, but now what? So any good tech product you want to build, or there's three key things you want to look at. There is the technology itself, the people who build it, and the processes they use to get there. So talking about the technology, what is the right technology? So I put that in inverted commas because what's right for me is not necessarily right for you. What's right now isn't what was right then. And so really you've just got to weigh out the pros and cons, look at what the community is doing, and then sort of see, sometimes you have to take a leap and say, oh, that's the one, we're going to try it and go. But we had to ask a few questions. Here is this thing, complex insurance. We've got to make sure that the customer can understand what this is. So the user experience is number one. You're no longer sitting on a phone call for 40 minutes talking to a person. You're buying and you're trying to buy within 90 seconds. So could we offer an immersive experience that you could see on a native app by just going through mobile browsers, PWAs? Would that work? What about if we go mobile only? We know people are really excited sitting behind their desks at the office trying to buy insurance. And the other question is, can we balance this agility? We really want to build, we want to move, we want to go, but at the same time, we don't want to compromise the user experience at the end of the day. So there's all these various tools and things you can use that are available. So what do you pick? These are the things you've got to ask questions about. And then obviously there's the developer experience. There's the back end, we're trying to build something out. And there's so many languages and frameworks. What do you pick? I mean, I know Microsoft is all developers, developers, developers. I see licenses, licenses, licenses. I said, no, no, no. You've got to look at these things and say, what's relevant? And then, of course, we want to deploy this somewhere. We want to put it out there. And we knew we wanted to be cloud, but really, back then, these guys were a little bit different from each other. If you knew you wanted to do something really data-centric, GCP was there, the place to go. If you wanted something that was more sitting along the serverless side, AWS was definitely running the head there. And so you had some options, and we had to pick something. So that led us to our starter stack. So we decided on the front end, we're going to use Expo, which is a really cool wrapper that sits in front of your React Native. And now we've got React as well on the front end. So it's amazing. Now you've got a developer who can actually work on the web and the mobile. Oh, nice. But then we also were actually using Facebook Flow initially, and that was breaking the IDE. So we said no to you, and we then went to TypeScript very quickly. And then we went to the backend. We said, well, it's fantastic. Now we want full stack developers, right? Because now they can actually sit in the backend, they can sit in the front end. Fantastic. Let's go with Node and TypeScript. Great. Then also, we are in insurance. We do price manufacturing. We do predictions, data science, and ML is really important. So Python shows its face. And then GraphQL, which is really cool because now you're dealing with relational data, but I don't want to have to create endpoints every time I need to talk to another piece of a thing. So now I've just got all my data. I can just say, I want this, now I want this, and I want that. Really, really cool way to talk to your data. And then serverless, a really cool way to have infrastructure as code sitting with your code base. So here you can deploy and it's all there in one place and you're in control of it, which is really, really cool. And then we decided to go with AWS. And the reason we went with AWS at the time was they had just launched, so they had their reInvent conference in November, and they said, this is cool new thing called step functions. Step functions is basically a workflow management or visualization tool, but it's partly workflow management primarily, actually, that allows you to control your serverless code, which is really cool because it was native and it just worked out the box. The alternative was sort of Java-based workflows, and nobody wanted to do that. So we were like, AWS, you're the chosen one. So that gave us a really starter tech. And I mean, we decided on Postgres. There's a whole bunch of stuff missing here. You don't see it. But we went with Postgres because insurance is complex. The domains are complex. There's variations on variations on variations. We didn't want tables with nulls all over the place and joins. So document store kind of having JSON and relational together was actually super, super convenient for us. And that's what we went with. But there is so much more today than what you see here, but this was the starting point. All right, so that's the tech. Then we go into the people, right? What kind of developer do you want to join your team from day one? Who's your Pikachu? All right, I was looking for someone with potential, passion, and curiosity. I didn't need someone who had many, many, many years of experience. I wanted someone who's like, I have no cooking clue how we're going to do this, but I'm going to freaking figure it out. I want someone who's going to help me and grow with me, and we're gonna get to from point A to point B. And so Lebogang Mabala was the beginning of that, and so we had the dream team ready to go. But obviously, with the people, you need the right process, right? We've got this idea, we've got something we want to do, and we need to get something built. So where did we start? We started following the Google Ventures design sprint. So that's a 5-day sprint where you start with an idea, and in 5 days, you go to actually build something and put it in front of someone. And it's a really, really cool way to get really quick feedback. And I'm going to run it through with you. So the first thing you're trying to do is understand the problem, because you think you understand the problem until you sit in a room and you realize each of you have a different understanding of what the problem is. And then after that, you actually find solutions. So independently, you'll look for solutions, you'll all sort of propose something, and then on the next day, you vote. And you start saying, I like these elements. Maybe you like the whole idea. Maybe you've got like so many stickies to use, and you can put your little votes across things. And then on the next day, you sit and put your UX out, and that's now your proposed UX that you're going to test with some customer. And that customer was someone random just doing their shopping in Sandton City. And you go, hello, I've got this really cool app. Do you want to try and use it and get some feedback from them? The other way we did it was we invited them to our office and we actually recorded them. And we would say nothing because you want to see what they do and where they get stuck. You don't want to help the customer. You want to understand, can they use this without any help whatsoever? So after that, we landed on Blue Panda. Yeah. So it wasn't really the greatest, but it taught us something. It taught us something that the customer wanted to know. We could get that out. It's also, we figured out what are some of the interactions they wanted to have with us. Didn't quite hit it on the nail, but through more iterations, we then got to Ben. I don't know if we got any better, but we realized that we actually like this idea of chat and this chat bot and being able to have a conversation and get things out that way. It's giving Nokia 3310, but yeah, I think this was sort of a few iterations after we went, and then we landed on eventually this. So what's the point of my story? My point of my story is you don't necessarily get it right on the bat. Sometimes you got to really push, and sometimes you land somewhere else completely. But there were elements that from the very first version of what you saw actually have landed up in the app today. It just looks a little different. All right, so what's the best development style? I mean, I don't think this is any surprise, anything special. Agile is agile, right? So we were like, cool, we're in this little office. We have little stickies that we would put on the wall. We didn't do Jira. We didn't have Trello. We just sat there, put them on. Sometimes they fall up. You pick them up in the morning. You say, where did my story go? I think it's done. So it was a great time, 5 people in a room. But eventually we outgrew that room, and you can actually see this is our war room. So it was a really cool room you could write on. It was a creative space. There's a design sprint going on. We didn't really have furniture, so half our thinking was on the floor. But very important to our success is that coffee machine that we rented that there, because you cannot solve problems without coffee. All right. And so we got to our beta, and this is really important. Why? Because early adopters, the people who just love your idea, are going to give you so much valuable feedback. And they just want to tell you stuff. So try and get them on the book. And all they needed to give us, it was super simple. Give us your email and we'll put you in the program when you're ready. And after a few iterations, we had the press come and it was ready. And I was holding my chair and I knew timeouts happen a lot. So, demo woes, it's the typical thing to happen. And we were actually very lucky. It all went well. But I can tell you, I was very, very, very close to expecting that timeout to happen. And so with that initial app that we sent out, we ended up having the opportunity to win this award. But we're all about scaling. So what's happening here? Let's talk about the mobile app, right? So one of the lessons we learned was no matter how much research you do, you're going to miss stuff. And what happened? So we used Expo, as I mentioned before, and we'd launched that, perfect, no problem. This is supposed to be a cross-platform thing. It works everywhere. And then we launched to Android 2 weeks later, and then we started getting complaints. And now it looks nice now on the stars that you can see over there, but you'll see there's a blip on the 1 star, and that's because of 2 reasons. One reason, we didn't prompt users to give us ratings, so the only people who gave us ratings were the ones that hated us. Then the second thing was that they would open the app and the thing would just not work, right? So it's like, what's going on? So one of the cool things about Expo is over-the-air updates, right? So you can go through this whole review process, and fantastic, the customers got the app, and now you're doing this over-the-air updates every time you want to update something. Nice. Problem, Android did not bundle the JavaScript with the app. So the customer got a shell. And in South Africa, if you're on 3G, good luck. Basically, they just got a random error that we couldn't control, we could do nothing about, and it would just fail. They'd have to uninstall and reinstall, and it was terrible. So we had to pull it back. What did we do? We spent 4 months rebuilding in just pure React Native. Difficult decision to make, especially at that time. However, we wanted to be in control and not be subject to someone else's decisions. And because basically you go into the issues and they're like, yes, we know, but it's not priority right now. So you're on your own. All right, but React Native loves breaking changes, and the App Store is constantly threatening to take you off the store if you don't upgrade now. So we were sitting with many, many, many dependencies, and the problem is you're trying to update, and, well, it take us 2 to 3 months to do update. Nobody wants to be the maintainer. It sounds cool. It's not cool, right? We want to build cool stuff. So what do? We turn to Expo, right? Now, you think I'm crazy, but we didn't move fully to Expo, but what my point here is that don't be afraid just because you were burnt with something that you just write it off. The point is time has changed. Things evolve. Tech moves, right? Always look back and just reassess. Just say, is there something that makes sense here? And we looked at that, and they have something that made a lot of sense. And this was continuous native generation. A very cool way to create these config plugins that effectively you can declaratively manage your native dependencies in a sense, or your packages that use them. And it's a really cool way to ensure compatibility across things. And by doing this, which they call it Expo pre-build, and just by doing this, we reduced our 3-month cycle of an upgrade into 2 days. We can do an upgrade in 2 days. So it's really, really important. All right, so let's talk about the web. When is the right time to hop onto the hype train? What was the hype train? The monorepo. This was the best thing since sliced cheese, right? They're like, oh, the monorepo, all your stuff is there and you can share your libraries and export, and this is fantastic. Except that when we saw this, it was really bleeding edge in the sense of just like everyone's hyped and the tooling is not available yet, really. So we were like, okay, yeah, let's do this. We rebuilt the thing 3 times and we're like, we did it. And then the web was taking 40 minutes to build. And this is a static website. You really think that's normal or okay? But we're very proud of our monorepo. So my lesson here was, sometimes you should watch the community and see what's happening. What are the frustrations? Don't just hop on immediately, but definitely stay in touch with what's happening. And so what this landed up meaning, though, is that these poor build processes meant we need more time. Our build servers were basically falling over. We were just using Netlify. It was nice and easy. You click the one button, it's done, right? So then we moved over to Firebase. There were some cool things because we got some local CDNs, and that was fantastic. And then we sort of moved into a more dynamic side. So we started releasing things in AWS, and so code build made sense. And then we looked at we're looking now at actually GitHub Actions, mainly because there's a good support community there. There's a massive marketplace that's just open for you to use, and other areas is it's not as great. But the other cool thing is obviously there's a lot of AI initiatives happening in this space, as well as code scanning, vulnerability scanning, and that kind of stuff, which is quite important. The other thing that really challenged us was actually SEO, right? Because we're fully digital. That's what we were on the internet. That's all we do. It's a digital thing. We don't do direct calling. You'll never find us call you just out of the blue to sell you something. It'll never happen, or at least I won't be around if it does. Um, but what we discovered is that SEO, Core Web Vitals, is a freaking hard thing to get right. And we actually ended up using Next.js in our latest build. And through that, and actually running through it with as a live server, we actually were able to get the optimizations that were necessary. So that was actually really cool. We would have expected just a static site that you built would just be the most optimized thing that's just loading files. No, actually, a live server that can determine what it serves to the browser is actually a little better. All right, let's get into the cloud. So I mentioned the timeout problem, right? This thing was timing out, so let's quickly go into that. What was the problem? We were serverless. What did that mean? There's code, there's services, right, that we're trying to call in this big step function, but what's taking time is provisioning it because we had barely any customers, so we weren't calling the thing. The thing was cold. The lambdas were cold, so we needed to warm them. So what was the solution? We just wrote a step function that wakes up that step function and all the lambdas in it. And all it does is call it. It just says blob as a JSON blob. It says wake up. And that's it. That was good enough to reduce our time and actually avoid the timeout. Something simple like that. Then third-party services. We know everyone's got different SLAs and different things that they're working with. And one of the challenges is you'll make a call and you wait and the thing times out. You call it again. It just gives you a response instantly. Well, what happened there? Or sometimes it'll always be reliable. And that's fantastic. The problem is that you know, it's very expensive to call services. So what do? You just say, okay, I want to cache things. I want to keep my own version for a period, and that saves us a lot of money. Great. So you build sort of some code that just says, okay, it's got this whole process. Doesn't matter which external provider you want to use. You can just sort of just configure it and off you go. And we deployed it as a single Lambda because it's just like, well, it's the same piece of code. You just go. The problem is that because each of them have different SLAs, when you're using them, effectively you could only configure it in one way, and that would be to configure for the worst case, which is this thing will eventually time out. And you want to like give it, so you're saying like, oh, you can get a quote in 30 seconds and buy in 90 seconds. And now how is that possible if you're always timing out? So what you had to do is just take the same code base, deploy it as multiple lambdas, and then we can manage catches and retries and change timeouts independently of each other. That was that simple enough to do. But then we had a major setback. So tens of thousands of step functions ended up failing. This resulted in duplicate payments. People were not obviously happy about that. Also, the data was in a terrible state, and you couldn't just rerun the step functions because if you did, you made it worse. So, one of the things you always say, like, don't optimize too early. And you say, okay, cool, then don't worry. We see this problem, but we'll fix it when we get there. Don't forget about it because that's where we landed, and then we ended up in weeks and weeks doing data migrations just to try and fix everything. So how do you avoid this? Well, the key thing here was idempotency. How do you make sure that I can run that step function every single time and there's no issues? How do I make sure that I get into a stable state? So something fails, you run it again. Ah, cool, it's sorted out. Right? And that's making sure that you handle the correct retries and catches, making sure that you check for duplicate instructions. It's just making sure that you're considering the fact that this thing might fail halfway through and we need to run it again. And once you sort of plan that in, you're good to go. But that leads me to the next thing, which is Event Bridge. This is a really cool thing, right? You've got this place where you can send events and then it'll go off to destinations. So you could call lambdas and step functions, whatever you want. And there's one thing you should make sure you do, which is read the docs. Why? Because one of the things they say is at least once delivery. So that means they can deliver more than once, which means if you get duplicate instructions, you're going to land yourself in a hot pot. So that was one of the things that you've got to make sure that you handle. And how? Well, idempotency is great, but also just being able to check if you've run an instruction before, add metadata to the request itself. And then concurrency management, especially when you've got cases where there's a lot of asynchronous stuff happening all at the same time, and these things are interacting with each other. You want to make sure that you have some sort of a concurrency locking mechanism on the data set, right? So what I mean by that is essentially you've got two events that come in that are trying to change the same record, and now they're competing for each other. That's effectively it. And what did we do? Well, we built a step function that was actually a locking mechanism. Fairly straightforward. And all that did was it allowed us to still have parallel executions, as many as we needed. But then in the cases where we started dynamically adjusting code of the same records, we were able to do this. And sometimes this was important because unlike a database sort of level lock or record level lock, sometimes if you're dealing with transactional records, you can't do that kind of lock very easily. And this allowed for that. Foresight is great, but wasted if you don't do anything with it. Really, the problem here was essentially that we've been on this big drive for alerting and monitoring and, the dreams. And we were doing a demo and this looked all fantastic. And we're like, okay, well, that doesn't look right. Something's going on there. What's happening? Why is there almost 4,000 connections to this database? What's happening over here? And we're like, yeah, we should put that on the backlog. Who can guess what happened the next week? Yeah, production went down. So lesson learned. If you see something, do something about it. At least look. But yeah, so that really talks to the tech, right? There's a bunch of stuff that we learned here. I'm sure there's many more that we could go into when there's more time for it. But obviously, we were talking about a team, right? Scaling the team, right? We started with 5 people. Half of them were not developers, but they were developing something. Some people should not be developers, but it's fine. We started with one team, and then we sort of branched out. Now we had teams for doing onboarding, we had teams for subscriber engagement, and we had teams for sort of managing claims. And then we kind of broke them out like that once we saw that we were just really struggling. Now, what we actually did is we hire actuaries. Of course, we're insurance, and it's important. But there's not a chance in hell that actuaries are going to come to the developers and say, please build me this thing. You build it yourself. So we actually train them to become developers themselves. So that was actually really important. They're really smart people, and they can do it. And it's part of one of the elements of our success. The other element here is the product owner. This is actually pretty unique. It's not unique in the industry, but it's unique in the way that we're doing it. So particularly, the product owner here is actually someone who was technical or still building stuff, but is a technical person, someone who's built stuff at Naked. And what's important is that they have a view of both the product and the technology, right? They understand what it takes to build a thing, but they also understand what we're trying to build. And that's an exceptionally important rule, especially or thing for us, because often you have sort of you have that extra middleman, the BA. I hope I'm not hurting anyone, but the BA that sits in between and translates. We don't need that. We don't need that. We're speaking the same language, all of us. So that's been an exceptionally important thing, and you rinse and repeat this model, and eventually land up with where we are now, 11 or so teams. And we follow sort of a shape-up methodology where we've got these shaping squads. Their responsibility is really just thinking deeply across what is the impact of things we may do, not things we are going to do now. But there are things that we're considering, and we want to understand what is it that it takes to do X, Y, and Z. And to both go into all the people underneath there to really understand what it's going to take before we even get to the real technical specs or technical designs. And then we've got obviously the teams themselves, the platform teams that build the things, research teams who go and figure out like what do we need to think about for new products, H&M for price manufacturing, so it's home and motor, and then a very important one, which is this enablement or capability engineering teams. Now, those little arrows there are not actually indicating that they only support them. They support everybody above them. But what is important in what we did, which is a little bit different, is because we're still scaling and, a small team, we've got to figure a way through this. You know that if you've ever been in a small team and you've got tech debt coming around, then tech debt gets shoved, nobody knows about it. And whenever you say, oh, we'll get to it this quarter, it's the thing that will get shoved off if there's other things we've got to do, because that is normally how it goes. We all know how good we are at planning our stories. So the thing here is that what we did is we said, there are going to be certain individuals who actually have a primary and a secondary squad. It's a little bit unusual because, like you're saying, you're splitting this person's focus. But in a quarter, it's actually very helpful because it ensures we still move those elements. We still have objectives and we still have to reach them. But at least they're independent of what's happening in the other squads. There's negotiations that happen between the POs of the two squads, or multiple squads, but they come from there and they'll say, okay, this is my primary squad for the quarter or secondary, and you kind of switch around. And that's actually working very well for us. And obviously it'll change as we grow, but that's where we are right now. All right, so then we've got scaling practices, right, or the process. So how do we avoid red tape? And how do we make sure we're still innovating, especially as you scale, especially as you get away from the thing? And we turn to the No Rules Rules by Netflix by Reed Hastings and Aaron Mayer. And we made sure we started to hire intentionally. I mean, we always had, but it was an explicit thing. We're saying we want to make sure we hire the best of the best. And I know some people hate the interview process because of it. It's a 5-step process, yeah. But I mean, the great thing is you want to make sure you're sure of this person. Why? Because we're trying to build trust. We're trying to say, I can trust you to do this. I'm just going to give you this, and you've got to own it. And it requires really smart people and people you can trust to do that. But then the second element of that is building trust. It's about having feedback back and forth. I mean, if you want to go and find out what salaries are, then come talk to me and we'll have a conversation. I mean, cool, whatever. If you're worth it, you're worth it. The other question is also, it's about strategy because you should be together with the strategy. You shouldn't just be doing tasks because someone said, go do this thing. You must understand what we're doing. So we, every 2 weeks, have all hands on deck. That is, the entire company sits on the one call. And we go through everything. We go from what the investor commitments are, we go through the financials of the company, we go through what is ops doing, what is finance doing, what is each of the dev squads doing, so that you understand where the hell we are as a business, because you need to understand the levers that move us. You need to be part of the decision making, even if you're just stepping in the door for the first time. And it's a great way to align. So that's part of it. We obviously do a lot of other things in that space. And as I mentioned, candid feedback, making sure that you can take feedback. And that's important because of the next item, which is removing friction, right? We don't have policies. The only time we have policies is because law says you've got to have certain policies. Other than that, we don't have an approval process and we don't have policies. How do you achieve that? Effectively, freedom and responsibility can only happen if you consult widely and you farm for dissent. What does that mean? That means you reach out to people and you get feedback on something you propose or you want to do, and you find someone who's going to argue and fight you about it. And it's difficult because having always someone to challenge you is difficult. It's not easy. But you always land up on something better. I mean, I've been in the space as well where I'm like, oh, I've got the answer. Like, come on, you just do this, do this. Okay, it's run of the mill, whatever. And then someone will be like, no, but did you think about this? And what about that? And I'm like, oh, okay, let me go back to the drawing board. So it's really important that you can take and give feedback. And this is key to the success of this model. So those are the key things that you have to do, and you keep going and you learn it. And yeah, it's not always for everyone, but once you get it right, you always know you're in a better place than you were before. All right, but then as our squads grew, we were wondering, well, how do we scale agile? So we said, oh, there's a SAFe framework, right? Scaled agile framework. Oh, fantastic. This must be great, right? People have solved the problem. And then we see this. I'm like, that's not very agile looking to me. Oh, where do you start? I mean, we're doing elements of this. We have release trains trying to move to on demand. We've got product owners and elements of this. But we just looked at this and we're like, okay, this is madness. We are not the corporate. We are not the enterprise. Let's figure this thing out now. And we zoned in on something particular. And that is the Agile Innovation Sprint. So what is this, right? The Agile Innovation Sprint is a 2-week sprint. 1 week of innovation and 1 week of planning. Why would you not continue building product and just suddenly take a break and be like, oh, we are now innovating? What does that mean? So innovation is time for you to do hackathons, to explore and experiment with technology. And we've done this several times, and every time we've done it, there's been something we've done which has actually landed up in production. We've learned something about the technology that's available and the state of tech and what it can do for us. The other day, we had a project that we actually had an LLM call a service provider on behalf of us so that we could just automate that process entirely. Cool. It's not in production, but it is something interesting. We just want to see what the tech can do. And that is extremely helpful to ensure that we're constantly trying things out and exploring. So obviously, the other part of of the sprint is the planning, and that is just grooming and the typical stuff. We're just trying to say, like, look, we've got 5 things we think we might be able to do. Let's just see what the impact and effort will be roughly over that quarter, and if we can do it, and we'll figure it out in the next 2 days. And so that involves making sure we have this 2-day process that we start and we say, here is the business context. So all the devs are sitting there, all the squads are sitting there, and they're basically listening to us tell them, this is what the context of the business is. This is what are the levers we need to move. Here are the commitments we've made. This is where we're standing. Just so you can apply that lens when you as a squad are thinking about what to do. And so the squads break out and they each sit and plan their quarter and see what are the things they can do. They can achieve that, come back, and then the hard part, present back to everyone what they think they're going to be doing this quarter that will achieve that. And there'll be lots of tough questions and a lot of back and forth and a lot of dependency management between the squads. But by the end of those 2 days, we've got our deliverables. We're ready to roll for another quarter. It's pretty cool. And then obviously it's an opportunity for continuous improvement, right? It's an opportunity to look back and say, what did we do right? What did we do wrong? What can we do better? And it's an important process, but each squad can kind of do their own thing in this space, and there's all cool things that we do. But I mean, the important part is learning from your past experiences and mistakes. And then, of course, education and training. Maybe there's a course you haven't gone to, something you want to learn. It's really a break from what you've been doing all quarter. And that's good just for your own morale as well. And then, of course, the last thing is buffering for unplanned work. Sometimes there are just, urgent things we need to do that came up in the quarter, but they're not really critical. Don't have to do them immediately. So we say, cool, we'll just do that in IP sprint. And that's a good time to just get something out of the way and not forget about it. So that is sort of where Naked is today. That is the experiences we had. That is some of the decisions we've made. There's been a lot to learn. We make mistakes, but we learn from them. And yeah, we're in an exciting place to be. And I just want to say thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk to all of you. I hope it was interesting. I hope I said even one sliver of something that was like, oh, I've lived that, or I know what you mean, or what did you mean about that? And come talk to me, please. I'm here the whole day. I flew down, so please just like abuse me. But yeah, guys, I really appreciate it. Thank you so much. I hope you have a good DevConf.